I'm Julia Chatterley, anchor for CNN International, and many of you, of course, will know the CEO and exec chair, of course, of Detsu Aegis Networks. Tim, fantastic to have the opportunity to chat to you.
Well, it's my honor. I'm usually seeing you standing in front of Parliament. I don't know how we convinced you to come and lower yourself to talk to me, but at least the environment's nice.
You know, that's an interesting one. I was told I was going for 5 days, and I ended up marooned there for 5 weeks, and it will continue, no doubt. But
I had a wonderful impression on Julia. We got together for the first minute, and if any of you sat in our cabanas, you know how low they are. Well, I properly went to sit down. I fell flat on my keister right in front of her. So I said to Danny, well, how's that for impressing a high-powered journalist right there from the beginning?
I was much calmer afterwards because clearly I was very nervous. You know, I do want to talk to you about the business, and we will, and the transformation that's going on, and particularly for your business too. But, you know, some of you people here may have heard the speech last night, and you were talking about your beginnings. You were talking about being drafted for the Chicago Bulls. I mean, just judging by the height difference, and I could do with a few cushions here as well, just to even up the games here. But talk to me about that, because that's pretty fascinating.
Well, if I was any good at basketball, I never would be sitting here. I had the desire to, and the aptitude at some point to make basketball my career. I played college ball at Notre Dame, and I got drafted by the Chicago Bulls. I sat on the end of their bench trying to convince the coaches to, that I was going to be the next Larry Bird. But then there's this thing called a talent deficit that got in the way, and I went from Chicago to Atlanta, to New York. I finally played 7 years of ball overseas. It was a great experience. I had the good fortune to play in some great markets. Trieste, Italy, 2 years in Monaco, and then a year in the Costa del Sol, and that ultimately led me to Japan. I ended up going to Japan out of purpose to play basketball, but I got a real job, learned to speak some of the language, and it took off from there.
We'll get to the real job in a second, because I believe we have a photo of you living in Monaco. Do we have that photo?
As I said last night, I had a 52-inch chest and a 36-inch waist. Those proportions have kind of changed over the years, but the good news is the Côte d'Azur never changes. I was young, dark-haired, single, and it was a good life.
Okay, I won't ask you any more questions about that. It could get dangerous. It's tough as a person, though. I mean, that builds you as a person. A challenge like that when you're incredibly young. As you said, you made opportunity out of adversity at that point, and you moved on and did other things. But you take things from that: leadership, teamwork.
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't. My basketball playing was a natural outgrowth of the fact that I was so tall. So there was a certain expectation there. But I think to be honest, it's all about perspective and being in the moment. I learned a lot from the way the basketball career went. Now, in retrospect, I think how fortunate I was to make a living at that. But I remember when I was living here, and the time I was living here, you would think you would be so happy. I felt very disappointed in myself. I was like, geez, what am I doing over here? And so you have to have these stretch goals, but then you have to learn to counterpunch. And so always kind of stretching and then responding to what happens and making the next step. I was very fortunate to be able to kind of make a transition from basketball. I've always been a bit of a globalist. I enjoyed living overseas, and that led me to Japan, and then future work opportunities that finally got me to Dentsu.
So talk to me about that, because either from a business perspective and now being the CEO of a huge business, but originating in what you were doing in Dentsu, but also being an American man of not insignificant size in Japan.
Yeah. Well, it's changed over the years. I first moved to Japan in 1985, and back then Japan was not as cosmopolitan a city as it is now. So even being a foreigner, you would kind of attract attention. So I'd stop traffic. I mean, it was like it was like a parade, but again, I've always approached, and I had the wonderful opportunity to work at Toyota while I was there. I was well trained, and then as my career progressed, I've always had just the wonderful opportunity to be able to, adapt to both the environment and also to approach things from a more of an anthropologist's perspective. You don't value judge, you just see what you can learn, and for me, I probably am really the luckiest, executive. My career path is not replicable in any way, but the opportunities to live in Japan and then subsequently what's happened with Dentsu the last 15 years has been quite unusual. It's part of being in the right place at the right time.
But also culture. I mean, people are already getting a sense, I think, of who you are. You're self-deprecating, you're humble, you're clearly very funny, and I think your career soared.
I've got reason to be humble.
Well, but I think it's important for blending of cultures, which we see now with the business. It's an East means West, and we talk about bringing the best of the West and the best of the East to the business, but the combination of cultures of making that work ultimately within the business for employees, but also for clients too.
Yeah, I think, at Dentsu, for so many years, we're a 117-year-old company, and it's clearly, no organization in our industry has had the presence or the power, the capability in their home market that Dentsu has had. And the Japanese culture has always played a very strong role in it. But I think as you evolve over time, and even as we built the global business, we've been very sensitive to cultures. I think cultures and cultural diversity is extremely important. I think agencies themselves have living, breathing cultures that you have to nurture and you have to take care of. I think the focus I found, whether it's living overseas, working in international business, or working in our industry, is getting to a common set of values. And when you find people that share a common set of values, where there's the fundamental goodwill and an alignment of what you want to do, the actual diversity in culture becomes a real advantage in execution. But what sticks you together and what binds an organization is the values that you share.
I mean, you've been on one heck of an acquisition hunt over the last 4 years, 100 plus businesses. Are you still looking? And talk to me about what you've created as a result, what you see as the vision now of the company.
Well, yes, we've been built by acquisition, but and the global business has, but it was all strategically driven. When we started this, the whole idea was, can we be Dentsu, which is world-class capabilities integrated in a common fashion and service for clients that deliver holistic solutions, and can you do that in more than one market? So we weren't necessarily interested in assets. We weren't necessarily interested in kind of the financial structure that our holding company predecessors were, where they're designed to buy assets, squeeze them together, and then have them compete against each other to drive growth. We were trying to build a complementary network and filling in capabilities based on a strategy where we could deliver in the biggest markets in the world, in the markets where clients need and want to operate, where we could deliver world-class solutions, and that everyone can compete and win alone in their own geography or in their own space. But when called upon and when the opportunity exists, that we collaborate together better. So there's lots of the vision of that, I think, was very different. And I don't like to say we acquired companies. We had great talent decide to join us. These are people that these organizations are their babies, and they've nurtured them over time, and they get one opportunity to decide how they're going to monetize that and what they're going to do with it and what the future vision is. So aligning that vision is very, very important. I look across the room. I see people here who have joined us, even years ago from acquisition. If you look at our management team, I would say 60 or 70% of the top 100 people joined us from acquisition. So I think the acquisition part is very interesting. We've done well. We've serviced our shareholders well. We're actually very good at identifying talent. We're very good at integrating it. It's still a challenge for us as how this all works together. I think we're doing better than the other guys, but we still have opportunities. But the key is the people that are still here. That's the important part of this, is that far after the transaction's over, they're still here. So I've always used the analogy that, M&A's, kind of like a, like putting on a wedding. Any fool can get themselves, a nice wedding party, but it's having the marriage that matters, and I think we've done that very effectively.
So what we've seen in the industry, and you've touched on it, is a huge shift to digitization. A lot of questions being asked of agencies, the agency model, ultimately, what relationship you have with clients going forward. Clients even saying, look, we're not sure, we have a trust situation, do we bring it in-house and do it ourselves? 4 years ago, you could have asked a question of the business of, were you ready for that? Were you behind? How do you view that versus where you are today?
Well, I think, look, clients' expectations are driven by consumer expectations, and
right.
Consumers are becoming much more empowered. The digital transformation has created unforeseen issues, but the shift of power has gone from the brands and from what they want to say to consumers to the consumers and what they want from brands, and that dynamic, the power is on the consumer side, and that's impacted everything that we do. I think we were early adopters we were fortunate in a lot of ways. We built ourselves a little bit later. I think everything that was considered Dentsu's weakness 15 years ago when I joined the company, we only had 3% of our revenues overseas. We weren't really strong in other markets. Everything at that time was, is it too late? I think it proved out to be a strength because we were able to build what we built. First of all, knowing the importance of digital, and then secondly, recognizing the end result of digital was going to be, having data and analytics at your base. Now, those issues, those capabilities, the power of the algorithm, what it's decided to do, we're at a stage now of trying to decide as a society and what consumers want is the right to privacy and the right to value. So it's gone from a communications, mission to how do you create value? How do you create experience? And are we ahead? Are we behind? I don't know. I like our strategy. I think our performance has continued to validate our strategy in some ways. Particularly, I think we were early adopters in recognizing and having a high propensity of digital in our business. And then we were very early and very fortunate to attract capability like Merkle and what they bring to the table. So okay. I think we're ahead, but I'm born paranoid and nervous. So.
Sounds like a good CEO. 2/3 now, though, the revenue driven by digital in some way. And as you said, Merkle, the use of data, surveying, understanding that what you're giving to the consumer now in terms of creative is backed by data. Essential. Talk to me, because I think this is a distinguishing factor for you.
Well, backed by data, yes, but it's about insight. And we've always had, as a group, our great, creative capability, our ability to deliver, ideas to clients. We've always been an idea-led organization, but what the data capability and really the step from that, the analytics and the insights allow you to do is really to be data informed, and then the new technology platforms allow us to enable tremendous flexibility and a tremendous reach into where we can connect with consumers on the journey in the right context in the right place. But it's still an idea-led business. It's still a creativity-led business. So it's still creativity, but it's now enabled by technology and really, informed by insights that the data can bring us.
I feel like the conversation all the time at the moment is data privacy, how sensitive we are now to our own data. I mean, you have 6 children.
Yes, I do.
You just compare your sense of privacy and social media use to theirs. Like,
yeah,
how do you feel about data?
Well, look, I do believe that's a challenge for the industry. It's a challenge for our global media partners and our clients. And in this consumer-led, world that we're in, privacy and controlling your own information is a human right, and it's going to be taken as such. And as I mentioned before, just because the algorithms can do it, I think governments and society and business themselves are now trying to figure out, okay, what should they do? Where does it, what's acceptable and what, and I think at the core of that's going to have to be privacy. But, we were talking before, a journalist asked me this week, am I comfortable with the amount of information that Google and Facebook have about me? And I said, well, I'm in control of how much information they have about me. And like my generation, I'm very mindful of that, and I'm not looking for that exchange. As compared to my 6 children, they live their world kind of very wide open. And the reason they do is because, it's the exchange of value. I think, it has to, consumers will share their information with you. I think there'll be a future where they'll share their information with you for a time, and they're probably going to have the right to take it back at some point. But as long as you're providing a value, a real value exchange, they're more interested in experience and things that bring them value. That's where they will appreciate the sharing of the information. But it all starts with a base of opt-in, and then recognizing what can we provide to them that is value, whether it's experiential or otherwise, that enhances their life. Just doesn't create more noise, because if it's just more noise, they're going to tune you out.
It's interesting. On my show, every week we talk about the big tech companies, whether it's we see government stepping into control in some way to have greater insight. But, I look at the numbers here, and for the big players like Facebook, we may have privacy fears, but we don't see users deleting their profiles. They delete the app, or they go to Instagram, not realizing that actually they're both owned by Facebook. So to your point about utility, it's an exchange. We're willing to give our data if we get a utility back. And for me, for all the question marks that we have right now of these big guys, advertisers continue to spend huge amounts as a proportion of advertising spending with them, and users are happy, shareholders are happy. I don't really see that changing right now. There's a utility exchange, and we're okay with it as users, as consumers.
Well, look, we're gonna continue to see change, and the pace of change has continued. And I do think as you look forward, everything's going to be based on transparency and trust. And I think, as I mentioned before, as long as it's transparent, as long as you've built the right to have this exchange in a knowing way, which is at the real core of the regulatory environment, whether it's GDPR, the California legislation that's coming, then that will continue. But I think what it also is going to do is as government gets more involved and as the regulatory environment becomes more demanding, then I think it will kind of weed out some of the players that may be creating difficulty and problems. Now, what it means in the long term for the big platforms overall, I really don't know. But the one thing I would expect is things aren't going to stay static, and they're going to continue to change, and you have to build and be prepared to be agile in this environment.
When you're talking about the digitization and how much media spend goes on different platforms, how do you see that evolving too, when you say you're going to make the consumer the central tenant of everything that you're building here, serving the client but making sure that the customer, the user ultimately gets what they want, is engaged in the best possible way?
Yeah,
how do you see that changing?
Well, as digital continues to grow, it continues to and it's growing, as a faster propensity of overall media, and then with that, the ability to glean and develop insights through data is critically important. I think as that mix continues to evolve towards digital, you're going to see continued expectation in the areas of consumer experience, in commerce, in loyalty, and in CRM areas. So we've always talked about we're going to innovate the way brands are built, but the purpose in that is so that we can help our clients kind of win, keep, and grow their best customers. I think a lot of the industry has been focused on the win piece. I think the other elements are going to be, how do you keep them? How do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them in value? How do you continue to up their value and grow them over time? And that's where creating these types of experiences become the focus and the growth, and why really you have to be striving to deliver the holistic solution, striving to deliver not only just the ability to kind of communicate and engage them, but to deliver them across all the dimensions of the marketing ecosystem.
What difference is 5G technology going to make, just in terms of the speed, the amount of information that we can absorb as individuals?
Well, look, the rate of change continues to multiply, and that'll provide much bigger opportunities. And we were talking before, I think the technology-driven change always gets here. Maybe a little bit later than expected, but I think having to be ready for that change, you're always a little bit late, and so I think that's the approach that we have to have. And again, 5G is going to have an amazing impact on the ability for the way both it's going to create the capability for brands to engage in new products and new capability and new technologies that are going to be very, very disruptive to existing businesses.
I also asked him about autonomous vehicle technology and how quickly he thought I'd just be able to not drive my car and just be on my phone the whole time, which sounds, on the one hand, great, and on the other hand,
well, maybe it won't be drive. Maybe the shift will be to who's going to provide your mobility, not who's going to provide your car, and that's what 5G is going to kind of enable, and things that we couldn't envision right now are going to grow because of the technology advances. And what Dentsu as a company has always been able to do, and what I think our core capability and what I want to keep as a global tenet is we've always operated at the nexus of media, content, and technology. And as that technology changes, being the early adopters to kind of innovate and organize how brands will engage in consumers in that new paradigm. I mean, our business started with a new technology, the telegraph, that created a business that was providing content to newspapers that on top of that engaged in an advertising business. When you look at what we're talking about today, it's still operating at that nexus of media, content, and technology, and that's where we have to continue to play. That's what's driving our strategy. That's what's driving our investment strategy as well, and how we've built our organization.
Innovation at the heart of that too. I mean, I was at a session earlier looking at space investment, which was just phenomenal. I'm trying to be one of the private companies, and a Japanese company, and I can see you there. I was listening. It was great. Trying to effectively land on the moon and competing for contracts. 3D printing sushi, I believe after this, you have to hang around and talk. I'm going to stay for that too. I mean, that's a cultural thing, but it's also at the heart of what you guys bring too, I think.
Well, again, expanding the imagination is an important part of creativity. We're here in Cannes at this festival, and at the center of what we do is ideation, is creativity, and how that manifests itself is in a variety of different domains. But clearly pushing the edge of the envelope that technology is going to allow us, and we just have to make sure that it's that in the end that it's advancing society as a whole. That society, the digital economy is coming in, and we, clearly there's the expectation that's going to benefit everyone.
Talk to me about that, about what you do as a company in terms of advancing society.
Well, we decided a few years ago that we added society as a constituent, right? That is one of our core stakeholders. So society as a stakeholder, as a concept, is something we're taking very, very seriously. We've been deeply involved in inheriting, being guided by the UN's SDGs. You'll see a lot of us wearing the sustainable the symbol for the SDGs. I think we're trying, but in having really truly social impact, it really has to connect to our business. So this concept of a digital economy for all, we have programs like The Code, which is helping people.
This is children learning how to
code, and we've focused on a couple of other marquee programs like the Diversity and Inclusion and the Female Foundry, funding women-based businesses and helping them nurture and incubate them. I'm very, very proud of what really started in a couple of markets is our commitment to completely renewable energy in all of our operations by 2020. we're almost 40% there, and we're making tremendous strides. We're going to make that goal. So I think it's a key part of just not giving the narrative and is really like putting that into action. I'm very proud of that. Also, I think the folks might be here. We've been deeply involved in a Common Ground initiative supporting one of the SDGs, the area of health, and supporting the Malaria No More project. I mean, right. those are the type of things that I think are critically important to serve back to society. That we, in our capability as an industry, can really help to have happen, and then it's critically important to our culture and our people. There's an amazing amount of engagement from our people in these initiatives, and it's not just about a moral imperative. There is a moral imperative there, but clearly you have a business imperative, and they go hand in hand. They're not adverse to each other.
I was going to ask you that actually. Is it about it being good for business, or is it just about actually it being the right thing to do?
They go hand in glove, and they're not opposed to each other. And where you can have the biggest impact is by using your business in a way that can help advance the focus areas and have a positive social impact while you're doing your business.
What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge that you face you've mentioned society, we've mentioned digitization, technology. I know people say, look, data is our greatest opportunity. It's also perhaps the greatest risk here right now. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge?
I think as a blanket statement, I would just say the pace of change. I think the pace of change is going to continue to faster. It becomes the new normal, and I think the disruption that is occurring, just you have to get ahead of that and use that as a wave, and there are clients that are being, or sectors of the economy that are being incredibly disrupted. So I think the challenges inherent in that is building an agile organization that is basically recognizing quickly and can work across the organization to adapt quickly to change. And the center of that is how you develop the culture of acceptance and the feeling that disruption can be positive opportunity. I think that's a challenge for all of our clients and for us.
And also for users, I think they like creativity when it has purpose, and we're seeing that more and more, whether it's climate, whether it's the general political noise that we see right now, and a culture of anger, I think, that we have.
It's unfortunate, globalization, has taken a pause, and you've seen it, the rise in nationalism, the issues in Brexit, the obvious, turning inward that we see across the world, but at the same time, the digital economy is slicing through all of that. So it's ever more important for the people in our industry and for the tech players and the business community to kind of step up and take a leadership role in how to help pull people together, as people have had a great turning inward in the last 5 years.
How do we tackle that? On an individual basis, but at a business level? Because I do feel like a lot of the conversations I've been having here is actually we can't wait for politicians to take action or to step up. Actually, businesses have the resources, the firepower, and the ability as being a group of people to effort change.
I think again, this first of all, I believe that short-termism is the enemy of this. That having the ability to take a long-term view is important, and taking the long-term view and really to focus on what's going to be enduring versus what's short-term. I mean, that's at the heart of a lot of these things. Is, are you managing for the quarter, or are you managing for the mid and long term? And I've always felt fortunate in our organization that we've struck the balance of that pretty well. There's always short-term pressure, but we tend to try to keep our eyes on the horizon.
So you're a visionary.
I work with. I'm an enabler of a lot of visionary people, and if I in the sports analogy, I'm in the front office. The players are on the court.
They're on the pitch. Oh, it's not a pitch, is it? Yeah, wrong sport. Sorry.
I've been in London enough lately. I got it. I know what the pitch is.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions, and if you don't have any or you don't have many, I'll come back to it. But I think that was a kind of perfect opportunity. Thank you for answering my questions. I have a few more, actually. I've remembered the things I want to ask, but we'll come back to it. Does anyone have a question that you want to ask Tim? Hi.
I'd love to hear more on the vision area of 5G, where you really see that impacting the world over the next 5 to 10 years from mobility.
Let me go. Ask your question again. That's nice.
Sorry. I'd love to hear more on 5G, where you see that impacting the world over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of mobility and just overall consumer experience on a day-to-day.
Yeah, well, again, the fourth industrial revolution is well on its way with the Internet of Things. That's going to largely be enabled, by 5G. So, I think that also accentuates the importance of data. Whether our things are going to be able to react for us, and whether our refrigerator is going to be able to organize our shopping list, and it's going to then tell my driverless vehicle to go to the store to pick it up, or whether an Amazon drone's going to deliver it in real time. I mean, you can envision all of this happening. Again, what I caution about this is always that the actual kind of real change driven by technology comes slower than we expect. And what's really important as you think about that future is how to prepare the organization and how to prepare with your clients for the direction of travel, because it's that preparation in advance, but timing is what's critically important. It's almost as bad to be right in the long run and be early than to be right about when it's going to really impact. So I think that's kind of the core question. There's no doubt that the world's going to change. If I look at my lifetime, I remember being a little boy, sitting in my living room watching the Apollo moon landings in '69. It was the most exciting thing in the world. But no one at that time ever envisioned to walk around with all the information in the world in your pocket. And so I think the key point about the advance of technology is not so much having the visionary of what's possible or what could happen. It's really having the trends of watching what's happening with mobility and being able to time when clients are at that opportune time between maintaining their existing paradigm of business and when they really make the commitment to the new direction. That decision is the critical decision to be on top of.
I feel like all those things, though, save us time in the end. And we'll probably end up spending that time looking at our mobiles, doing whatever we want to do. And that's a huge opportunity for your business.
Well, again, that's, when I'm not a big futurist. I don't walk around and, but I listen to a lot. I get the good fortune to go to Davos. Most recently, I was at Satya Nadella's CEO conference with everybody there, and I get to listen to a lot of smart people, and I think that is where we have to have the optimism about the future. Is that we are heading towards a world where there will be more disposable time created in our lives. Now the core question is, what are we going to do with that time? But that's an exciting part of the future. And what you see is that it's certainly not going to be sitting there absorbing someone else's messages. What society and what consumers are going to want are more experiences. It's going to be an experience-led engagement in the future.
I just realised I'm looking out at the blue sea there and going, yes, that would be lovely. Any other questions? And thank you for that, by the way. Great.
Hi, Tim. You spoke at the start of the session about your sort of route into the industry and how it's perhaps a little unusual compared to maybe some of your peers.
Compared to anybody.
Compared to anybody. We're live streaming this. We get a lot of questions on the feed about sort of the route into the business for people today. What would be your advice to someone perhaps out of college or even earlier looking to get into our industry?
Well, first of all, what I notice around the world is the variation of interest in our industry. If I go down to Brazil, I walk in with people like Mario there to a restaurant, the place stops like a Hollywood star moved in. Everyone wants to be in the advertising industry. It's a wonderful thing. Whereas, the proverbial, story in the United States is, I'll go into advertising if I can't sell my screenplay or if I can't get a job at Goldman Sachs. It's the fallback. So I think our industry is a tremendous industry. I think our industry is kind of moving up market. The future is bright. And I do defend the agency model as a model, but I think where it's heading in its relationship and how digital transformation and marketing transformation is the core of business transformation, it's a great opportunity for all of us. Now, what I say to the people that we bring in our organization, is, and that's the advice that really kind of drove my career, is how to be what I call horizontally directed, and it is being experience-led. It's just say yes. Do you want to do this? Yes. You have at a certain stage when you're young in your career, almost in any industry, but especially in our industry, say yes to everybody that asks you to do anything. Don't ask where's it going to go, what the next step is, how's it going to lead to where I get your job. Just say yes. And as you do that, you end up becoming a really qualified and talented person. If you have expertise and experience in a variety of areas, you will then go vertical. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's a very, very important message for the talent that we see coming into the industry now. I think there's always this desire to see a path. Where's that going to lead me? Why should I invest? Where's that going to go? I think that holds people in the new generation coming in back, because it'll either end up being very narrow where they have a certain specialism, and then guess what? Someday somebody's going to come along and move your cheese. All of a sudden what you thought you were going for is going to be over here. So you have to have that kind of wide ability. And I think it ends up, the people that make it, successful in any of the industries generally have had this wide, diverse base of experience.
Brilliant, thank you.
Love that. Just say yes. Anyone else? Do we have time for another one? Yeah? Perfect.
Hello, Tim and Julia.
Hi.
After Dentsu plus EGs plus 100 companies, are you happy with the culture that we have acquired, or is there any plans of shaping it differently?
Happy with the
culture.
The culture. Look, I'm extremely proud and extremely grateful and honor the commitment of the companies that have joined us. I think they add a great deal to our business. Obviously, our growth has been dependent on not only the companies we've acquired, but the great talent that has seen us and has decided to join. And I think that there's, as I said before, I think the cultural diversity, whether that's across the national plane, or whether that's across, the culture of a digital agency or a data-driven agency, is going to be very different from a media agency, which is going to be very different from a brand performance agency. And I don't want to kind of homogenize, right? I want the organization to actually kind of celebrate those capabilities. But if the thing that we have to keep focused on in our organization is the common values that have brought us together and what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish very simple things: to compete and win in every major market against whoever's there, And then when the opportunity is for a cross-regional opportunity or a global opportunity, to be able to win in every category, whether that's creative, media and performance, consumer and commerce, or brand loyalty, have world-class capabilities that work together. That'll be driven by shared values and strong cultures that drive those capabilities. So I believe, in values, and then I believe the cultures are a reflection of the values. So we have very, important set of values. The center of client centricity. I want much more thinking put behind, things that endure, mid to long term view instead of, kind of the short term. But then, kind of agility, honesty, responsibility, integrity. These types of things are how you reflect the values and how you get people to work together. So I do think there's much more to do for our organization, but I think we're built differently than other people. And I think if we stay on the path we're on, we'll end up being able to deliver that kind of holistic solution across geographies for clients in a much more coherent way than the previous competitors, as well as the new competitors that are coming into the market.
So if I had to sum up, I'd say you're on the path, the future's complex, but you're incredibly optimistic and you're positioned right. And if in doubt, just say yes.
That's right.
There we go.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much.